While there is so much meaning to be pulled from Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, this morning's Torah portion, in our family service this morning, we made the decision not to terrorize Temple's kindergarten demographic with a story of a father tying up and preparing to sacrifice his child. We instead read from the story of creation, the very first Torah portion, fitting as Rosh Hashanah is described as Harat Olam, the birthday of the world. On day one, Genesis tells us, God created light, saw that it was good, and separated light from darkness into day and night. On day three, God separated the waters from the land, saw that it was good, and added vegetation. On day four, God created the sun, moon, and stars, saw that it was good. Vayar Elohim ki tov, God saw it was good. The text repeats over and over again for every day of creation except for day two. What wasn't good about day two? God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the water, that it may separate water from water. God made the expanse, and it was separate from the water which was below the expanse and the water which was above the expanse, and it was so. God called the expanse sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, a second day. Did you catch it? The rabbis of Midrash did. Rabbi Hanina points out that there was nothing new created for the improvement of the world, only division between sky and land. Hanina isn't as much focused on the air we breathe as the act itself, division rather than creation. The introduction of division, he foresaw, would, quote, cause turmoil in the world, so much so that his peers, Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, taught that day two was the creation of Gehenna, the Jewish version of hell. Almost 2,000 years later, would anyone disagree with him? Does not the level of division we're experiencing in our community and in our country and in our world make it feel a lot like hell? Our collective conscience, our inclination toward mutual responsibility, our very ability to be decent people has fractured along political party lines with the upcoming election, along generational lines with regard to Israel, along socioeconomic lines, along the lines of identity awareness, and so many others. Our inability to see enduring goodness and a spark of the divine in others, and to simply act like it, has fractured us into as many notes as the teruah, which we will soon hear from the shofar. As we welcome the new year, 5785, it's time to turn the page on all of this division, changing the way we hold differing views, changing the way we argue with one another, and changing the paralysis that those differences and that argument instills within us. It's time to turn the page on what it means to hold differing views. The oldest joke in the entire canon of Jewish jokes is the one that says, where you have two Jews, you have... Have you ever stopped to reflect on what that says about us as a people? The ability to hold conflicting opinions, multiple points of view, used to be so key to our identity that every single person in this room knew that answer. To study Torah or Talmud, to embrace the multifaceted history of the Jewish experience, to have a discussion as a Jew, is to earnestly and ardently, stereotypically with raised voice and lots of hand gestures, articulate a very heartfelt position, and then become the debate club hero by turning the subject of discussion over and over again until we disagree with ourselves, let alone the person we're talking to. We seem to have lost that ability as a people and as a society. In the words of William Kohlbrenner, a professor at Bar-Ilan University, we have forgotten that disagreement is the Jewish way of conversation. We are now so willing to die on our ideological hills that we myopically overlook that that hilltop is already strewn with the bodies of those who have died in vain, those whose self-righteous ideological purity didn't turn out to make a damn bit of difference. The noise of the polemic, Kohlbrenner writes, drowns out the poetry of life. It pulls us out of the texture of our shared existence. Can we go back to embracing the methodology of disagreement that has sustained our people for thousands of years? Is it possible, maybe, to admit that if you don't know enough to make multiple sides of an argument, that you might not know enough to so ardently express even one? This doesn't mean compromising your morals. It doesn't mean compromising your values. It doesn't even mean changing your opinion. It simply means caring enough about the person you disagree with to more thoroughly evaluate their opinion. It's time to turn the page on the way we hold differences of opinion and also how we argue. Ecclesiastes Rabbah, the Midrash of Jewish tradition, tells the heartbreaking story of Rabbi Yehuda ben Nekosa. The text relates that Rabbi Nekosa was being challenged again and again by heretics, by those so fundamentally opposed to his point of view that they had nothing in common. They questioned and challenged and provoked and harassed him until his evil inclination got the better of him. Let us settle this once and for all, the text says. Let's make an agreement that whoever wins the argument should crush the skull of the other with a hammer. Rabbi Nekosa bested the heretics in this debate and then defeated them with his hammer, smashing their skulls until, the text relates, quote, they were covered with wounds. His students laughed. His students cheered. His students screamed, and I quote, Rabbi, heaven has helped you. You have been victorious. Only when the adrenaline subsided did Nekosa understand the abject error of his ways. What kind of victory is this, he asked rhetorically. Go and pray for me, for my mind, which was once full of precious stones and pearls, is now but full of coal. The argument and his certainty and his vehemence and his violence ruined him just as it ruins us. When every argument is irreconcilable, the soul internalizes the fighting mentality, Kohlbrenner writes. We can't tolerate ourselves, let alone others. I want to let you in on a little secret. Never, ever, ever has that pithy retort you felt vindicated to put in the comment section or on Facebook changed a single heart or mind. And the point in the argument where you start labeling isms, racism, sexism, ethnocentrism, ableism, that's the point where there's no possibility of productivity, no matter how right you might be. When the principal difference of opinion becomes an argument, it's time to cut your losses before you make the mistake of Rabbi Nekosa. Even if you later feel you've won the argument, especially if you are so certain as to fight to the ideological death, you've lost decency, relationships, people. You're not convincing anyone, so stop letting it get to that point. This doesn't mean compromising your morals, doesn't mean compromising your values, it doesn't even mean changing your opinion. It simply means caring enough about the person you're arguing with to prioritize them over being right. Our ancient sages, Hillel and Shammai, set a perfect example for us. Jewish tradition records that their disciples, their students, disagreed more than 300 times over matters serious and trivial, Should conversion to Jewish tradition be minimalist or maximalist in terms of study? Should we start with 1 candle in the Chanukiah and build to 8, or start with 8 and decrease to 1? On what day should we celebrate the new year for the trees that we now know as Tu B'Shvat? In what position should your body be when reciting the Shema? More than 300 disagreements are recorded between the schools of Hillel and Shammai. They never stopped arguing. Yet the Talmud relates the students of Shammai did not refrain from marrying the daughters of the students of Hillel, nor did the students of Hillel refrain from marrying the daughters of the students of Shammai. This teaches, and I continue quoting, that they prioritized affection and camaraderie between them to fulfill the verse from Zechariah, love truth and peace. To love peace, to seek shalom bayit, doesn't mean compromising your morals, doesn't mean compromising your values, it doesn't even mean changing your opinion. It simply means caring more about the person you're arguing with than your need to be right. Finally, it's time to turn the page on the paralysis that our divisions and our disagreements instill within us. Can you imagine, just for a moment, what this world would look like if people spent an equal number of hours volunteering in the community as they do watching cable news commentary or scrolling Facebook and Instagram and TikTok? An equal number of hours working towards solutions as receiving the fear and division that others want you to hold. But we don't, in no small part because those damaging, destructive forces make us feel connected and righteously, morally indignant in ways that keep us going back for more, only to realize that an hour or an evening has passed unproductively. It's like spending all day being concerned about what your neighbor is doing with their lawn, gossiping with your other neighbors about its length, reading township rules about nuisance properties, dreaming up passive-aggressive ways to let them know how angry you are, to the point that you forgot to mow your own. We become so paralyzed by the cycle of difference and argument that we don't do anything to impact the issues we claim to care about. So grab a pencil and audit a single day in your life of how you're spending your time. Is it closer to day 1 of creation, choosing to bring light into this world? Is it closer to day 3, ensuring that there is food for all to eat? Or is it closer to day 2, adding only division? Our differences of opinion and our arguments paralyze us in our divisions. They isolate us from those we love, from our family and friends, and they bring us no closer to a better world. As we welcome the year 5785, it's time to turn the page on all of this division, changing the way we regard those with differing opinions, the way we argue with one another, and changing the paralysis that argument instills within us. Doing so doesn't mean compromising your morals or your values or changing your opinion. It simply means caring about the people around you, caring enough about others to simply evaluate what's helpful in this world and what isn't. Dying on the ideological hill of your own certainties, screaming and yelling and isolating others and ourselves through argument merely so that we can be right, staying in our self-reinforcing ideological echo chambers while never doing a thing to improve the situation we claim to care about. We've created Rabbi Yochanan's version of hell here on earth, prioritizing division over people around us and our relationships with them. It's time to turn the page. This year, people simply have to matter more. People matter more. Shana Tova.